let's segue Casino into talking about the Atlanta Falcons. And the question now is, are they the clear favorites in the
Oh
NFC
yeah.
South?
Oh yeah, dude. Especially when they signed Matthew Judon from the Patriots, it is a done deal. They've got with Aaron Donald out of the picture, they got one of the best pass rushers in the league. They got one of the best defensive players in the league. Um, he is outstanding. And if it wasn't for Aaron Donald, I'm sure, and his injury last year, I'm sure he could have won Defensive Player of the Year once in the last 3 years. But
Yeah, in 2021, he had 12 and a half sacks. 2022, he had 16 sacks. And then obviously last year was injured.
yeah,
But
he was working his way towards it. He was working his way towards it.
yeah, so but you know what? That is a nice, what is it? A nice little snapshot of basically
Mhm.
what this team to be the best and to be the favorite in the NFC South needs to do. And that is have players returning from injury be healthy, right? Like we just mentioned, Judon coming off an injury. Also, their big signing this offseason, before we even get into the numbers, was the signing of Kirk Cousins, the quarterback formerly of the Vikings and Commanders, who is coming over after that injury last year, where it looked like he was maybe having the best season. He was on record or on pace to have the best season of his career. So last year, when we talk about this Falcons team, they were 7-10 and missed the playoffs. However, their over under going into this season is 9.5. I actually picked under. Casino picked over, but I'm because I was like, why are we putting uh so much trust in the
Love.
Falcons team? Yeah, but I have come around. Since
Good.
doing research, I
It's
am
about time.
now on the Falcons bandwagon, especially after looking at their stats last season. Last season in total defense, they were 11th in the league, 8th against the pass, 20th against the run. Again, I don't know how that's 11th, and the Saints are 23rd, but who knows? In total offense last year, they were 17th in total offense, 22nd against the pass, 9th against the run. And then going into this season, all offensively, they have the sixth best rated offensive line unit, the fifth best wide receiver room, the 13th best wide receiver group. And then when you switch to defense, they have the 24th worst linebacking core and the 28th worst ranked defensive line. So they brought over from the Rams to shore up that defense, Raheem Morris, who was the Rams defensive coordinator the past 3 years. They brought over Zach Robinson, who was the passing game coordinator for that same Rams team. And then they brought over the defensive coordinator, Jimmy Lake, who was the assistant head coach for the Rams. So all Rams all the time. Uh, but Casino, the big moves in the offseason obviously were the Judon trade, were the Kirk Cousins signings, and then the Darnell Mooney wide receiver for the Bears coming over. But why I mean, I've joined you, but why are you on this Falcons bandwagon for them being the best team in the NFC South this year?
Well, I mean, as we talked about it, we don't trust the Saints. We don't trust the Panthers. I mean, we haven't got to the Panthers yet, unless
They're
you
next.
talked about them and I missed it.
No, they're
Um,
next.
um, but it's going to come down to Tampa, and it's going to come down, to the Falcons in this. And I like what the Falcons did in their offseason way more than what Tampa did. Tampa didn't really do a whole lot.
They did
Atlanta,
almost nothing. Yeah.
yeah, I really like Atlanta. Um, it's going to be really telling at the beginning of the season because week 2 they got at Philly, and then week 3 they got Kansas City at home. So oh, my kid fell.
And uh on that note, to what Casino was just saying, there was one signing that the Falcons brought over, which was, so I just look at like a couple I look at like 2 or 3 of like free agency trackers just to see who they got, who they lost, what the consensus is on it. And the name I kept seeing for the Falcons of a signee they signed, or a player they signed, where I was like, who is that and why is this guy getting like top billing with guys like Kirk Cousins, like Darnell Mooney, I'm sorry. And that was Charlie Warner. And so I was like, who is Charlie Warner? And I looked at his stats, and he had almost no receiving stats basically after being in the league for 5 years. Right. So then I dug further, and this actually made me kind of more sold on this Falcons team. So Charlie Warner coming over from the 49ers, where he never had more than or I think he had 5 receptions like 3 years ago, right? So I was like, why are they paying this guy 3 years, $12 million? So they brought him over because he is one of the best and most efficient run blocking tight ends in the league. So what I found out about him was he was a highly effective blocker with an 86.7% pass block win rate and a 77.5% run block win rate when he was in the game. So both of those things to me mean they're trying to A, give Kirk Cousins more time, and B, shore up that run block offense to get Bijan Robinson, right? An extra blocker out there. So when he gets to the edge, he's allowed to just break free. So that was
Right.
one of the underrated free agent signings where I was like, oh, I actually like what that means for the future of this team. And not the thing that sold me, but just one of the added elements where I was like, I really like the Falcons offseason. I really like Raheem Morris, especially to what he did with that Rams team in the 3 years he was there, just making a smothering defense that, I mean, are they even going to be the same with him gone? Probably not. But yeah, I'm all in on the Falcons, Casino.
So what I was going to say is, week 2 Philly, week 3 Kansas City. If they can pull an upset off of one of those two teams, they're going to turn heads right at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And that can give them all the momentum they need to do really well, because they're already expected to lose against Philly and Kansas during week 2 and week 3. But if by some chance they're able to beat one of those two teams, that is just going to propel them mentally just through the ranks, and they're just going to be very, very good. That's going to just change their mindset about their team, because if they lose to them, they're going to be like, okay, those were two on the docket that we were like, all right, we're probably going to lose, early on in the season. But then, then they got the Saints, Tampa Bay, Carolina, Seattle, Tampa Bay. They kind of got an easier week or easier setup. That as long as they can get past Tampa, which I still think they're going to, that's pretty easy. I mean, and to end off the last 4 games, I'm looking at this. The last 4 games, they have the Raiders, the Giants, the Commanders, and Carolina. So just tally up 4 wins at the end of the season.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And the what is it? Is the game against the Falcons is in prime time, or it's not in? Yeah, so that's Monday night.
So against the so they get 2 primetime games in their first 3 weeks. They get 3 in their first 5 weeks. They got in week 2 they got Philly on Monday night, and week 3 they got Kansas on Sunday night, and then week 5 they got Tampa on Thursday night. Like they can really show the NFL and change the landscape about their chances by the end of week 5.
Well, but this begs the question, elephant in the room, Casino. Do you trust primetime Kirk Cousins?
That's a good question. That's a good question. New team, new Kirk Cousins. Let's go.
New phone, who dis? That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying.
Hmm.
But yeah, I agree with you. I also think it's good for this Falcons team to get the Chiefs early, because I feel like
all
the
day.
Chiefs are a very beatable team in the first like month or two of the season.
Very much so.
And it's always just when they're after the bye, then it's like they never lose and go to the Super Bowl. But
Yeah, I
first
I
month and
I
a
have a
half,
hard time seeing them beating the Eagles because the Eagles are typically always good early on, and as you just alluded to, the Chiefs are not.
I agree.
Last year's a great representation of how that works out. Both teams good and then bad and then bad and then good. So
Yeah,
I really think that's going to how it's play out. So I think their best chance of beating one of those two teams is going to be against Kansas City when it's going to be in Atlanta. So
I agree. I do think the only thing that would stop them from upsetting Philadelphia is Philadelphia has the week 1 is a Friday game, and then they have all the way till the following Monday for that game. So that's a lot of rest, that's a lot of prep, that's especially against Kirk Cousin on Monday night, which is when he's been the quarterback of the Commanders, he owned the Eagles. When he's been on the Vikings and played against them, the Eagles have owned him. So who knows what the Falcons will bring. But again, that's one game early in the season. So I'm not going to base my predictions on that for really either team. But yeah, I do think Falcons uh I said it right there. I do think they are the clear favorites in the NFC South.